Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown between the two awesome warriors, Moss Shadow 95 and In Jail Out Soon. So obviously playing from a jail cell somewhere deep within the Atha-Loren realm, as we have the forces of the Empire on the left led up against the forces of the Wood Elves with two rather intriguing builds. Should be a really fun game, so let's hop in here and have a quick little look at the build. So a rather cool formation here, almost like a Christmas tree type shape, with some archers in the front line looking to get off a few shots, counter skirmish with the Wood Elf archery, as these guys of course are far cheaper and should be a little bit cost effective before pulling back behind their own lines. For the main battle lines, it is going to be spearmen with shields dotted all the way along, cheap, cheerful warriors, having to be here and absorb some of that damage with their mighty shields. Look at this guy, how can you say he's not happy, cheering and screaming in defiance of the Wood Elves. In the back lines here, we do have 3 units of swordsmen as well, so overall the infantry is incredibly cheap and low tier. That is because we have a few rather expensive units here. We have the Silver Bullets, Regiment of Renowned Handgunners, fantastic in this matchup due to their stalk, as well as their magic damage, makes them very good up against the Regiment of Renowned Stags, and in general they can do big burst damage to some of the high targeted or high value targets that the Wood Elves do bring. We have a Jade Wizard, of course, with Earthblood and Regrowth, and you almost always see a Jade Wizard when Karl Franz is brought, and he's one of the most brought Empire Lords, hence you see this combination an absolute ton. And that's for good reason, it's very good. Garl Moraz, the Reichland Runefang, and Stand Your Ground are popped on the mighty Karl Franz. He can be a little bit squishy, hence the Jade Wizard. Apart from that though, the big elephant in the room, the reason I'm sure you guys are here, is the double steam tank. It's going to be a glorious day. Oh, a glorious day indeed when you get double steam tank. Now these guys do some big long range damage, of course, with that big old fat cannon shooting out the front. They're unbreakable, they cause terror, decent armor piercing as well, and not too much in the Worth roster will be able to shut them down effectively, apart from Way Watchers, and they can counter shoot the Way Watchers relatively well. Of course, they can be swarmed by Eternal Guard, War Dancers. Orion as well will pick these guys apart with deadly efficiency, and he's a pretty common pick now up against Empire because you see Volkmar so often. But anyway, for the forces of the Wood Elves, we do have 1 unit of Way Watchers, so just a sole unit here shooting from the front, and on the flank we do have some Wild Riders, and on the other flank we have the Lost Silver Knights, Regiment of Renowned Great Stag Knights, who of course are ethereal and do huge burst damage and incredibly quick across the ground. Going to be an absolute nightmare for the Empire force to deal with here, unless they can get those silver bullets on them, in which case the Lost Silver Knights will be lost to this world for sure. We have a mixture of Eternal Guard and Dryads dotted all the way along the front line. Eternal Guard in a bit of a compact formation here, perhaps getting prepared to try and fend off cavalry. Being in a compact formation, it's harder for the cav to penetrate, and their charge loses a lot of its momentum, but he definitely also spread out here when he's realised his opponent has indeed gone for some range options instead. We also have double Deepwood Scouts in the back line, one of which does have the Swift Shiver Shards, considered by most not to be too potent and powerful, but I am a massive fan of them. I think they're really fun pick. Quite hard to use, but if you can use them effectively, they can certainly rack up the damage. We have some Wildwood Rangers, a unit you never see. These guys are incredibly disgustingly squishy. 40 armor, no shields or any of that good stuff, but pretty decent stats all round and nice added armor piercing. Should be able to help drag down some knights and other heavily armored creatures. We also have a Wave Stalker back here, going to be launching in a few shots, and we have Drycha, who's a really good cheap lord. She's a hybrid as well, of course, being a caster. She is going to be coming in here with, of course, her Dryad summon, which is always very good, Roused by Wrath. We also have Pit of Shades, the Wither and Enfeebling Foe, so a nice little toolkit for her. Of course, the more damage she takes as well, the better she buffs nearby troops. She has magic damage, and all round, I think she's going to be a relatively competitive choice once people get a little bit tired of using the Sisters and the Orion-Ariel combination. Way Watchers have been forced back here, only lost 1 model we have, as the archers are trying to counter-skirmish them. Not going to be a good day for the archers here, taking huge losses every single time a volley does come in, and the Deepwood Scouts are moving up as well to pressurise, although the Wild Riders have been hammered pretty hard now by the mighty steam tanks. It looks like the Force of the Empire just going to be repositioning, trying to fall back with the archers. Have this unit not going to be quite so lucky. The Wild Riders are swift devils indeed, going to be charging down and charging the archers in the rear. Although a big cannon shot does come through, getting friend and foe, but certainly worth the cost. The archers are broken, but Spearmen going to be driving back the Wild Riders, who took quite a lot of damage on the approach here. Lost Silver Knights as well, taking big burst damage from the steam tanks. Yes, they are ethereal, but damage is damage at the end of the day. And now the Silver Bullets are shrieking havoc down the line of the Lost Silver Knights, taking massive damage. And there is no healing on the side of the Wood Elf force today, which is going to be huge. We can see a lot of the Silver Knights still alive. Getting a good rear attack into the Spearmen should be able to break them down quickly. But down to just 17 models now after another volley does come in. Steam tanks racking up a huge kill order so far. Karl Franz, well, just floating defensively, which I quite like as well. You don't need to use him aggressively. Use him to protect the back line where possible. Archers are now trying to counter-skirmish a little bit, although they are getting picked apart by the Deepwood Scouts. Now, the Swift Shiver Shards do fire 2 arrows at once, so of course their damage output is pretty huge. However, they are relatively short range, at least for ranged troops. They're going to have to get a little bit close for comfort. Lost Silver Knights pushing in here, trying to drive back the Archers, and a really nice pick here, hunting down the unit which has done so much damage to them, which is the Silver Bullets. So you get a couple of last shots off. They're certainly doomed, but their Lord and Saviour is here. Karl Franz driving down from the skies, and yeah, sure, he doesn't do magic damage, but he still hits like an absolute truck. Should be able to pull down the Knights there. A nice summon of Dryads from Drycha in the back line is going to finish off these Archers, and the front line is well and truly engaged at this point. Eternal Guard and Dryads picking their way through the lines of Spearmen. But for the most part, the Empire are holding relatively firm. The Archers, though, are now getting overrun by Wild Riders as the Steam Tank starts to take consistent pressure from Deepwood Scouts as well as Way Watchers. Way Watchers coming with that nice armor piercing, going to be pretty key there. Steam Tank has been hit by an enfeebling foe as Dryads and Eternal Guard attempt to surround, and this is the problem with the Empire build as a whole. Going so expensive on the steam tank and so light on the infantry, we can see the front line has been absolutely decimated, but they still have all these key targets fighting. Karl Franz has managed to butcher these Silver Knights down to just 2 models remaining. In fact, they died to the last man due to the Silver Bullet pressure. These guys certainly making some fantastic value so far, and going to be peeling back to the relative safety of the back lines, as well as have lost all their mobility with the Wild Riders going down. But I'm going to see a fat Pit of Shades going down on top of these Swordsmen. Now, they're not too much of an expensive unit, but still doing some lovely burst damage, and that leadership is getting nuked here as the steam tank gets a fat regrowth, keeping it nice and topped up, as it was taking pretty huge damage across the board. Now, the Wood Elf Range Core is still online and did some pretty good burst damage here actually to the steam tank. It's an Arrows of Colonels hits it as well, but that regrowth certainly keeping the steam tank in the game. It probably would have been down to just the sliver of health at this point. Drycha is starting to push forward as the secondary steam tank can now crossfire and save its buddy on the left or focus down key targets. And it looks like it is currently shooting and trying to aim for those pesky Deepwood Scouts. Now, how are the Wildwood Rangers doing? It looks like they haven't actually been engaged in combat yet, being left in deep reserve. Now trying to hunt down Karl Franz, who does have the Reichland Runefang. He should be able to escape and get up into the air, but not before taking a pretty big burst of damage from these Way Watchers, who, despite the fact there are a lot of cannons online, have got some pretty good work done here. The Jade Wizard getting a little too bold here, surrounded by Eternal God and Dryads, is going to be getting dragged down, but he should be able to escape on his pony, get back to friendly territory and regroup, as there's no Wild Riders left darting around the flanks. Silver Bullets and Archers are pouring in fire. Karl Franz even considering coming in to save the day, and it looks like the Jade Wizard will actually survive this combat. Over here in the main fight, Drycha is pushing her way through her own Eternal God, try and do some decent damage, and with a Wither, the steam tank will get deleted by Way Watchers, but a really well-timed regrowth has gone down. So funny watching regrowth go down on a unit which isn't Karl Franz for once, who has started in here to help try to finish off Drycha and her reign of terror. Apart from that, Wood Elves are clearing up the backline pressure, but it is making them waste a lot of their ammunition on troops they don't want to be using on Spearmen when they need to be doing it on those larger targets. Karl Franz is taking a bit of a hammer in here, actually, as a second summon does go down. So there's only 2 in the game, and the second one has arisen. Going to be finishing off those swordsmen, helping push down the enemy. I think I would have rather put it on the Silver Bullets to try and finish them off, although the Wildwood Rangers, sorry, are going to be breaking their way through them in the relatively soon. Spearmen will be able to hold them back for a while, but Wildwood Rangers should, in theory, manage to pull through them very quickly. Stat-wise, they're not too bad, but on the actual field of battle, they don't tend to fend so well. Deepwood Scouts and Way Watchers running very low on ammunition. In fact, Way Watchers completely out at this point. Karl Franz, well, has impunity. He can just float through the back line here. There's actually nothing which can pin him in and finish him off. All the range core of the Wood Elves has been finished, and with that, it's probably going to be a struggle for them to realistically bring down the steam tanks. Surrounding them with mighty warriors and dropping some Wither may be the only way forward. swordsmen charging in to try and aid their spearmen brethren, but it looks like it was a trap. A big fat pit of shade's going to be coming down again, catching a ton of these spearmen, and also some of the own Eternal Guard. The Judge won't be too mad about that in lore. She's not the biggest fan of the Elves, funnily enough. More prefers her Forest Spirit company. So Deepwood Scouts have managed to survive somehow, and in fact, where is Karl Franz? No way have they managed to finish him off. Nope, here he is. Taking an absolute walloping of damage, though. Those Swift Shiver Shards certainly packing a bit of a punch here. Down to just 740 health, and that'd be a fantastic way back in the game for the Wood Elves. Balance power is currently against them, but if they could finish off Karl Franz when he's up in the sky, they then might be able to surround and swarm the steam tanks. But it looks like he's going to be floating back towards his Jade Wizard, begging, please give me a regrowth as fast as possible. Archers and Silver Bullets now unleashing salvos into this core of the Wood Elves, who have kind of rallied together here to try and push forward. Wildwood Rangers actually took a very long time to get through those spearmen, and because of that the archers can now do some really good value, slowly start picking them apart. Silver Bullets as well are going to take them on a little bit of a merry-go-round, just peeling back. No need to engage if you don't have to. Deepwood Scouts desperately trying to catch up and fire in, although it looks like they're trying to shoot their own troops here at the moment. Perhaps the battle madness has swarmed over them. The Waystalker as well as Drycha are trying to surround the steam tank, which currently has stand your ground popped. We're going to see another pit of shades coming down on the swordsman. Lovely use of it so far. I don't know if it's really been getting good value because it's just, you know, killing cheap troops, but still, it's always glorious to see such a crazy spell used. And also, it will do some damage to the steam tank, I suppose. I think a better use would have been Wither, though, to lower the armor, maybe an overcast Wither, in fact. Deepwood Scouts are currently being forced into hand-to-hand combat, something they certainly don't want to do. Steam tanks are starting to run low on ammunition. This one's been fighting in melee a long time, so it's okay stuff, but this secondary one has been firing consistently for a long time. Archers just generally being pesky on this flank here, shooting it into the big blob as the steam tank does start to go down. But Karl Franz is going to receive a big fat regrowth, and with that he should be able to finish off the majority of the Wood Elf force single-handedly by himself, as they're just getting absolutely obliterated. Wildwood Rangers do finally get on top of the steam tank, which is a target they want to be trying to shut down here, but I don't think it's going to do them much good. They are low on number and fleeing for the hills. So if we take an overview of the battle, it looks like all the force of the Wood Elves are in mass retreat here. Drycha just rather stubbornly trying to hold her ground, screaming at her Waystalker to get back here and help her. He does unfortunately oblige for him before having second thoughts as you see Karl Franz with Garmaraz raised heavily, cracking that wooden skull of Drycha. But a Pyrrhic victory to the forces of the Empire with a really awesome build. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Pretty crazy stuff. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. We do drop a video every single day, as well as a stream or two. So, all round, really fun matchup by both of these true champs, Moss Shadow and In Jail out soon. Well played to both of those guys. And a massive shout out to Moss Shadow for sending this one in via my Discord. Now, of course, we need to straight away zoom in here and see how much damage those steam tanks did. Now, this one got some pretty good damage value, 1,200 and 6,700 damage dealt, but the main reason it's so good here is because it's still pretty much full health. This is another steam tank the Wood Elves would have to drag themselves through, which isn't something they want to particularly do. The other steam tank going up to a silver chevron, faring a little bit better here. Damage value 2,700 and 14,000 damage dealt. Been a real rock in the center of the formation when all the other Empire forces were running and retreating. It held back the Wood Elf onslaught, allowed those other troops to rally and come back into the fray, also allowing the other steam tank to fire freely, and the Silver Bullets, who did disgusting damage. 16,000 damage dealt, over 3,000 damage value for a unit of this cost is very impressive, and they were the best answer as well to the Lost Silver Knights, who are pretty damn expensive, and managed to basically neuter them from getting any effective value themselves. Archers did okay as well, being a little bit of cheap counter pressure, and the Swordsman and Spearman, of course, not going to get fantastic value technically, but held the line for a good long time, keeping back the Wood Elves for as long as they possibly could. The Jade Wizard, some nice regrowths, keeping this Silver Chevron steam tank in the game, which, as I said before, was a backbone holding the Wood Elves back, and also healing up Karl Franz at the end, who did a decent job pouncing down when he could. Got a little bit risky though. If a couple more shots from the Way Watchers would have gone in, he maybe could have been done for here. As for the Wood Elf force, big awesome build as well, so big shout out as well to this player. Always good to see Drycha in action, making some pretty good value. Her summons as well can be invaluable, shutting down a unit of archers. I think, though, one of them on top of the handgunners would have been a slightly better solution. And the Waystalker as well, doing some good consistent damage. No artillery pieces for him to snipe on today, but a must pick in this matchup with those arrows of Kernos, doing decent damage to the steam tank all round. A ton of guard just doing their part as well as Dryas to try and chew through the enemy as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the Wildwood Rangers, although left in deep reserve, so they didn't get shot up on the approach, didn't really manage to perform too well. Got a nice surround on the steam tank at the end, but it was a little bit too late. However, the Deepwood Scouts performed relatively well, doing some pretty big damage dealt, including these Way Watchers who are really trying to carry their 2,300 damage value and nearly just over 9,500 damage dealt. Very impressive work from them, considering there was only one unit of them. Wildwood Riders, unfortunately, much like the Lost Silver Knights, kind of suffered a similar fate by getting obliterated by the double steam tank. Now, I'm not saying this is like a necessarily super competitive build or anything that you'd want to take in tournaments or on ladder against Wood Elves, but at the same time, I think steam tanks have merit in this matchup. Now, Orion is a big scary foe here who could be a problem for them, but if you've got Crossfire with handgunners or two steam tanks, Karl Franz darting in and out, cycle charging him, I think steam tanks can actually be pretty good here, despite the fact most consider them a bit of a meme. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.